Two worlds collide in this emotional journey that provides a blueprint on how to promote peace amid times of war. Emma's world was turned upside down when her daughter Praxie was told she would never walk again. Faced with the traumatic circumstances of her daughter's condition, Emma began to draw a comparison between her daughter and her war-ravaged country of origin, Cameroon. Detailing the events in Cameroon and the struggles of its people trapped in decades of tyranny, Emma interweaves the history of a war-torn country with threats of a personal conflict. In this first-hand account of what a mother learns from her daughter as she faces a new and changed life, Unraveled reveals how to turn heartbreak into inspiration and thrive in the midst of a conflict. Unraveled. Why did you choose the title Unraveled?
The world is unraveling, right? We're living through an unprecedented times, never before seen in history. So in a way, the title is really apropos. But what motivated me to write this book and call it Unraveled is really about awareness. It's really about call to action and unpacking this issue of erasure, which is a tool of oppression, as I call it, a pernicious tool that is being used against the people. It's also, Unravel is really about a story of taking a stance against injustice. On the one hand, about a system that sees a human being as an item on a balance sheet, and on the other hand, about entrenched systems that seek to essentially erase a people. It's a story about conflict and finding hope and justice.
How does conflict-inspired living at the heart of human transformation?
Conflict-inspired living is a concept that I came up with. It's really a concept of finding strength when faced with a challenge. I tell the story in Unravel that on October 30th, 2016, the universe declared war on the life I knew, the life I'd left behind, and the life that was growing within me. And I found myself cradling my 24-year-old in my arms, and she was as if a 2-month-old, unable to move from the neck down. At that moment, I heard the words, "You will never walk again." Simultaneously to the date, I also, and many of us were experiencing images of death, destruction, murder, killing, military, of a war just breaking out steps from my childhood home. It wasn't clear for me at that time what felt worse. As a mother, the suffering of my child, and on the other hand, the death and destruction of family and friends. So this concept of conflict-inspired living is really about being real, as I say, taking responsibility for transforming the conflict we find ourselves in. Being engaging and enrolling, I could not have gone against an insurance system that told my daughter go home and die or go home and languish in a nursing home without first accepting the responsibility that I will stand up and speak up for her in spite of the pain that I felt as a mother. It's also about being answerable to yourself, because you do have the power, control, and agency. Too often we find ourselves giving that power away, or we allow ourselves to wallow in our pain. Finally, it's about a concept of leading, but not any type of leading, as I want to say. In Unraveled, I talk a lot about the concept of social justice leadership. That is no longer simply the things that concerns us in our neighborhood. It's about the things that are far away that we must advocate for and raise our voices against injustice anywhere, because injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Unraveled is about a personal story. It's very, very evident. What is the correlation between the personal story expressed in the book and that of a girl, or should I say a mother, at the front lines in the war of independence in Cameroon?
It's about everything. There's a clear relationship between my personal suffering, that of my daughter, and that of any other mother facing the barrel of the gun. As I say, the death of a child, of my child, could be the death of anybody else's daughter. So the girl facing crisis in Cameroon is we are called to be empathic to that person. So I think there's a clear correlation between any mother's suffering and another mother's suffering. So my child could have been anybody's daughter. I find that for me, the girl in Cameroon who today is displaced finds herself now in indentured servitude somewhere in French Cameroon. There's a girl out there prostituting her body just to get a meal. There's a mother whose home has been burnt down and has children who she doesn't know whether they'll live or die. So my suffering for my daughter could be the suffering of any other mother. There's a clear relationship. I talk about this concept of not in my backyard NIMBY. It really ties into this, that we're called to advocate for each other and see the linkages between our lives and that they're intricately linked to others. It is going up against an insurance system in America, a fight that says you're just a number on a balance sheet. The same way, the child, the young girl in Cameroon is being told, you are nothing. So we must advocate for that person as well.
How does this book explain the use of a painful personal experience to motivate action and change without resorting to war?
The first thought that comes to my mind that's really contemporary in answering this question is the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who said that silence in the face of terror is taking sides with the oppressor. But I also want to read something on page 18 of Unraveled to answer your question. And beneath my surface, hemmed a hidden beauty and power, unrevealed and untested. For years, I had maintained a delicate balance between my two worlds and self. In doing so, I convinced myself I was neutral. But conflict does not allow for in-betweens. You're either in or out. Back again to Desmond Tutu. You cannot be silent in the face of terror. Your silence is really saying, I'm neutral, I don't care. You must take sides. So my personal challenges with my daughter, fighting to make sure that she wasn't sent home to die, can be equated to those on the ground fighting to say, you cannot kill our children, and the rest of you stand by and stand back. This is the point where I say, in Unraveled, I highlight the fact that men do start wars. And when it comes to peace or seeking peace, they stop listening to each other and their egos are at play. So we have to think about the suffering of hundreds and hundreds of people in Cameroon and begin the process of listening. Right now, the regime in Yaoundé is not listening. They are on a war footing. The armed groups are not listening. They're fighting amongst themselves. And in the process of that, we have the thousands of people who are killed, the children who are displaced, as I said, now are indentured servants across the River Mungo. Many young girls prostituting to save their lives and have a meal. So for me, the strength that I got from recognizing that in the depths of my own sorrow, I have strength to go against the system, is what Unraveled calls each reader to do. To find in their own challenges that strength to either go up against entrenched systems, as I said, that of a regime that wishes to erase not only the cultural history of a people, but essentially to kill them, and stand up for them, that collectively we can change the trajectory of our conflict situations and begin to transform. So Unravel really calls the reader to understand that between crisis and their goal of fulfillment is this concept of transformation. But to do so, we really have to go into that place that is so vulnerable to begin to understand where our strengths come from.
What do you hope the reader will get from the book Unraveled?
There are three main things, really, that I hope people who buy Unraveled, download a free copy, or get it as a gift can learn from Unraveled. It's really how to thrive in the midst of conflict, right? How to find hope even in times of war. Ultimately, I keep coming back to this concept of how we can take ourselves from couch warrior to social justice advocates. It's really one of the central issues of the book. And why is that so important? Because too often we are comforted by sitting on the couch and, as I say, doing Monday morning quarterbacking. Meanwhile, lives, limb, are at stake. So in Unravel, we really call the reader to take on that role of being not a couch warrior. In American parlance, you say shooting breeze, right? To really stepping into the game and playing. In this case, we're talking about an existential threat, not only to us, but to an entire region. So my hope is that readers understand this concept of the transformative power between crisis and your goal to move themselves from being couch warriors to social justice advocate. That's one thing I hope. And again, thriving in the midst of conflict, understanding that my journey fighting a mammoth like the insurance companies is really not a singular experience. Many other mothers face this challenge. So if my story and some of the call to actions I have in Unravel can inspire even one person, I think the book would have done its job. And finally, last but certainly not the least lesson that I hope the reader can take from Unravel is going against this pernicious concept of erasure. Now, we've talked about powers, levers of control rather. We've talked about levers of control. And what are those? It's really how institutions, governments, and people use religion, communication, the judiciary, etc. to control. Erasure is one of those tools that has been meted on the people of southern Cameroon to the point of extincting, annihilation, annexation, and today war. So that concept of erasure is very powerful in Unraveled. And I really got to the point where, as I said earlier, I woke up one day, the country I sung its anthem and carried its flag was no longer my birth country. I had to start learning my ABCs. Why? Because the tool of erasure had been used on me and successive generations to near perfection. So Unraveled is a story, again, as I say, about character. What we find in the depths of our suffering is power, if only we can tap into it. It's about a place and time. For me, the time was a system, fighting a system here in the United States. For others, it is fighting a war. It's about time because it's contemporaneous to us. It is about our lives. And it's about finding hope and justice. So I hope readers will find some call to actions that are practical, easy to use, that they can use in their own conflict situation or just in their own lives, so they can truly understand this concept again of taking themselves from merely a couch warrior to a social justice advocate. I believe Black Lives Matter is not by accident. We truly have a situation today where one knee on a George Floyd's neck creates a movement around the world. I'm simply borrowing from that concept to say there is a knee on 8 million people's necks, and we need to rise up wherever we are sitting on the couch with our coffee or our tea and say, we need to change the situation in the country Cameroon, just like we need to change the healthcare situation in the United States for the betterment of everybody.
Be prepared to move from a couch warrior to a social justice advocate while reading this inspirational memoir about finding hope after war.